job. She's asleep. And the rest of the administration seems completely uncaring with regard to this issue. Now, in Congress, we've talked about the bill that was presented already, completely stalled out in the first month of the administration. I've heard nothing about it since they decided to go piecemeal with a couple of smaller resolutions. But at this point, I really don't think there is a win.
I want to jump in with a story about essentially Vice President Harris being called out by a first-term freshman Republican representative from Texas, Representative Troy Nehls from the 22nd Congressional District down in Texas. It's in the Houston area down there by the Gulf Coast. Now, this guy is really interesting. I did a little homework on Representative Nehls and was confused as to why I hadn't heard of him before, because he is totally our kind of guy. He is a military reservist. He did tours in Bosnia and Afghanistan, and I believe Iraq as well. He's law enforcement, former sheriff. This is exactly the kind of guy that we like to see in office. So I was reading his sort of background and thought, well, why in the world have I never heard of Troy Nehls before? This is perfect, sounds exactly like our kind of guy. Well, he's been in office for since he was, just a few months since he was sworn in. So, but totally seems like our kind of guy. He was on Fox News the other day talking about Kamala Harris and her supposedly being the border czar, although she doesn't seem to be. In fact, we did a story today about her stating that she's not focused on the border. So I don't know what kind of border czar that makes. But he really called her out for the excuses that she's been putting out there for not going to the border. I think we have a brief video clip from that interview of him essentially reading her the riot act for not having been to the border yet. Let's see if we have that video.
You just don't want to visit the southern border because you know what you're going to hear. You're going to hear from the Border Patrol, Department of Public Safety, Immigration, small town mayors, and everyone that lives along that southern border that you are doing a horrible job, you're in complete denial, and you need to fix the southern border. That's what she would hear if she visited it. So she's going to use the excuse, like everything else, COVID.
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't want to hear from the people who are actually sort of the constituents, if you will, at the Border Patrol, the people who live there, small town mayors, law enforcement, etc. We've all seen the pictures. We've seen kids just jammed into containers. We've seen the folks coming up from New Mexico, probably not from New Mexico, probably from Old Mexico, as well as Central America in their "Hey Biden, let me in" T-shirts. We've seen all of these things. At this point, here's what I think, and this is just my theory. I think the Biden administration is really struggling with the border, trying to figure out what to do, what to say, how to appease the far left and the more moderate parts of their party, and come up with a plan that might actually be able to be passed by a Congress which is not leaning heavily to the left. It's it's a very evenly divided Congress. So, you guys, what do you think? Is there at this point any way for the Biden administration to win politically on the issue of border security and illegal immigration?
Win is a strong word. I think there's a way for them to get cover from the media. They always do. I think they came in, frankly, without a plan at all on their hands. I think that they were pretty assured that, numbers were down, things weren't going to, get completely out of control, and if they did, no one would mind. The media would just say, this is exactly what we wanted. We're giving refugees an opportunity, and to some extent, that is what the media has said. But I don't think they were expecting everyone to turn their eyes to the border when that flood started coming in. And they clearly didn't have anything ready to go. For several weeks, there was nothing going on. And then there's this conversation about Kamala Harris being, the person for the job. They prop her up to do it. And then 3 days later, Biden says, well, she's not actually doing the border. And then the administration keeps saying that she's doing the border, but she doesn't go. So she's absent on the job, she's asleep, and the rest of the administration seems completely uncaring with regard to this issue. Now, in Congress, we've talked about the bill that was presented already, completely stalled out in the first month of the administration. I've heard nothing about it since. They decided to go piecemeal with a couple of smaller resolutions. But at this point, I really don't think there is a win. They didn't get the major bill that they wanted. It was dead on arrival in the House, where they should have gotten far more votes than they were apparently able to whip up behind the scenes.
Right.
And the optics of the actual crisis itself is a disaster. So it's a lose-lose, both politically and operationally.